and Joe Duke from the Caloundra Regional Gallery. First and foremost, I just would like to acknowledge the country that I live, work, and play on. This is our area is the Gubbi Gubbi and Jinnabara peoples. Traditional lands, and we recognise that these are still very much connected to them culturally, emotionally, economically, and they continue to live on country and share knowledge with us, which is amazing. Today, we're so excited because we've got Todd Fuller, who's going to have a chat with us. Todd is a Sydney-based artist working on, I think it's gestural land, or I probably said that wrong, whose practice integrates drawing, animation, sculpture, and performance to explore themes of identity, history, and community. For over a decade, he has crafted award-winning, extraordinary hand-drawn animations that engage with speculative histories, both personal experiences and overlooked narratives. A graduate from the National Art School, his work has been exhibited widely across Australia and internationally. He was the winner of our 2024 Sunshine Coast Art Prize. We were so excited that his work has come into the collection. The 2018 Jacaranda Acquisition Drawing Award, the William Fletcher Fellow, and has been a finalist in is it the Suleiman Prize? Yes.
Yeah.
He has done international residencies in France and Rome, lucky him, as well as domestic residencies also with Blacktown, Port Macquarie, Grafton and Bundallong, and is represented by M Contemporary in Sydney. He has a fabulous website, so if I've forgotten something, you can roam through it to discover more of him and his practice after we chat. See toddfuller.com.au. Hello, Todd, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'll take a breath now because I get a little overexcited when I start. I haven't done one of these for a while, and I so enjoy chatting with artists and finding out about their practice, etc. We do have some questions, so we might wander on and off them, but I'll start with the first one, which is how and when did you first become interested in art?
Yeah, that's a great question. Before I answer that, I might also just mention that I'm coming from the land of the Gadigal, Bidyagal, and Birrabirragal people and pay my
Oh, wow.
respects to them as
Thank you.
well. How did I first connect with art? I was actually always a drawer. I was that weird kid who didn't love sport, who would sit in the car at his brother's soccer matches, building paper worlds. I would create comic books. I drew all the time. Um,
Did you have
I
a
also
favorite? Did you have a favorite superhero
a favorite superhero, not
in
so
your comic
much, but I
books?
was I was a massive Pokemon nerd, and I still quietly every now and then dip in
You've
and
got a
watch
shirt, haven't
a
you?
piece. I no, don't quite have a shirt, but I was a massive Pokemon nerd, and animation has
Right.
been a big part of my life, as
Yeah.
entertainment as well as my career.
Yeah, because it's interesting that you talk about comics back then, because I mean your animation is really just comic strips on, fast and constantly drawing, telling stories. So it was something you were interested in right when you were younger.
Always. And I've have like my year 6 graduation book says, what do I want to be when I grow up? And it said a Disney animator,
Nice.
which I haven't quite achieved, but I feel like I'm still making a little bit of animation magic.
Definitely. Like we love the work that we have in the collection. The thing that's so amazing about your work is people look at it and they forget that each frame is actually a drawn piece of work that then has to be stitched together. We forget because computers live in a world where you can easily, work it on a computer, but these are hand drawn and each one has to be changed. And that's an extraordinary amount of work to create one piece.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So any animation could have anywhere from a couple of hundred drawings to a couple of thousand. The most I've done was a 22-minute piece, which was 8,000 drawings
Oh
on
my goodness.
60 pieces of paper. I've done a few now, and the numbers blur, but ballpark.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, it's a real obsession. It's a real addiction, actually.
Yeah.
I love the flow state of it. When you get into the rhythm of drawing, you kind of go into the studio and you walk out 7 hours later completely forgetting you've just been in the state of make a mark, take a photo, move a hand, make a mark, make a photo, move a hand. like
Yeah.
like it's such a compelling thing to do.
Well, it's extraordinary because I was watching one of your videos on your website and I noted that you took a photo and then you walked over and did two dots on a cloud and then walk back and take a photo and then go back and do two. It's like, oh my goodness, you get your steps up for a start, but
Oh yeah, I'm thin for a reason. Um,
because
but
the
it's
amount of
also,
work.
I mean, you think of it as being very time heavy, and it is, but
Mm,
also once you get into the flow of it, some minutes, like I'll go back and look at the time signatures on those stills as they come through, and in some minutes I might produce 4 or 5 stills because you just get into the rhythm.
yeah.
You're not stopping. You just backwards and forwards, make a mark, take a photo, make a mark, take a photo. It's a real ritual, and it's energetic and it's labor intensive, and um, it's burning calories.
Yeah, and it's a typical artist activity, I think, that sort of ridiculous amount of time to create these extraordinary pieces, which for us are 22 minutes. So, it's
Yeah.
amazing. But the thing that I also like is you could probably do that on computer, but you've made a conscious decision not to do it that way.
Yeah, I really I'm actively resisting the urge to go down the computer path. I'm really
Yeah.
interested in the analog. These are human stories and I want to tell them in a human way. And they're stories about imperfection. So the
Oh,
imperfections is very much a part of it. I love it when I make a mistake and it's left there,
yeah.
even if it's left there for half a second or a quarter of a second, it's there. And I think there's a lovely truthfulness and a lovely authenticity to that. Even when lighting changes and you get those flickers, those nods to the fact that, not everything can or should be perfect. And that rawness is a real part of my aesthetic.
Mm, that's amazing because the other thing, I guess, is your mindset when you're making, because you actually have to understand that this mark has to be removed to create the next version. So I'm trying to get my head around how you actually do that because that's an extraordinary. Every time you're changing, you've got to know exactly what that next image is going to have to look like.
Totally. And also the other part of it is the amount of death and destruction in the process. Like it's one
Yes.
thing to move something like a cloud, but when you're moving a full body in
Yeah.
movement and sometimes you can get away with just like moving an arm
Mm.
in your drawing. But if your body is moving across the page, you
You have
literally
to.
have to draw it all, render it all, make it accurate, and then you have to kill it. You rub it out and it's gone. So it's this process that
Wow.
is constantly about the life and death of the drawing. And I'm lucky because I'm working in charcoal, you get the remnants of it, you get the trace, and that
Yeah.
becomes a part of it. But actually, it's a big process of, um, creating something and then letting go.
Yeah, we were really lucky that we were able to acquire, and you also donated some of the drawings that come into the work that we have in the collection, and you can see that effort of the drawing within the works on paper. Look, I've gone off already on a completely different tangent in my first question. I am so bad. So I'll go, what is your favorite medium to work in and why? I think we've discussed a bit of this, but charcoal is your favorite?
Yeah, drawing in general. I love
Mm,
drawing. I love charcoal. William Kentridge, the amazing godfather of animation, says the joy of charcoal is that you can change it as quick as you can change your mind. And I think that's
no,
really
nice quote.
appropriate for
Mm,
animation. And the way I work is very much learn from his process as well as the processes of Disney and the Aardman brothers and various other sort of heavyweights of animation history. But I love charcoal. I love drawing. I'm the other addiction I have is drawing. I try and draw every
yeah.
day. I've got sketchbooks everywhere. I've got a sketchbook in the bedroom, a sketchbook in the living room, a sketchbook in my work bag. There's always one floating around in the car. Um, it's a
I
really
love that you
important.
have an addiction almost like a cigarette. So I've got cigarettes in
Yeah,
the bedroom, bathroom, toilet, but yours is drawing books. That's
mine's are
amazing.
sketchbooks. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Because I noticed also on your web it shows you doing your sketches, but you also are bombastic with ink, like whew, in there and do amazing things with ink. You have no fear.
No guts, no glory.
It's
Anyone
amazing.
anyone who's done a class with me knows that I'm just like no guts, no glory. Um, and also the other thing is I'm so used to killing drawings that they're
Yep.
kind of not precious anymore
Precious.
in a weird way.
As a
Like
collector,
yeah,
as a curator, that makes my heart pump a bit faster, I have to say,
and
Todd.
it's a really lovely, interesting tension. Like I will be slashing and hammering out a drawing and rubbing it out and And then at some point something turns and we put the white gloves on and we treat it like this sacred object. Like it's a really
Yeah,
lovely part of the drawing's life.
yeah, it's amazing, and your drawings are extraordinary. So, when you were at the National School of Art, was that your training? Was it in animation? Was it in drawing? Was that your specialty area?
A really good question. The National Art School doesn't teach animation,
No.
and drawing still there is foundational, but not an elective. So
Yeah,
I did my 9 hours a week of drawing with them across life objective and general drawing,
yeah.
but my major was actually sculpture, and
I
so
know.
yeah, so sculpture still very much informs how I draw and how I think. And you see that in how I draw. I've got a real focus
Yeah,
on turn of plane in how I kind of model in space.
yeah.
Um, yeah, but no, animation was actually a bit of a weird thing for some of my sculpture lecturers who didn't really know how to deal with that. They kind of went, yeah, off you go, and were extremely supportive, but they didn't necessarily know how to teach animation
Yeah,
or support animation. So a lot of my methodology was self-taught, which
right.
I'm really glad happened because it helped me find some niche spaces between formal ways of doing animation. It helped me find an experiment with, like, I was doing cell painting on cells at one point and then
Oh,
going, well,
wow.
what if I what if I do that with marker? What if I do that with ink? How does that work when that combines with paper? Like
Yeah,
the lack of clarity there meant that I just threw myself into all the processes and kind of found my own
nice.
niche. And for a while there, my work really looked like William Kentridge to the point that it was um, derivative, and I
Yeah,
fully acknowledge that. And then at some point, all the mediums started coming together, and all those different processes started layering together. And I hope and I think I found my own way of approaching hand drawn animations that is,
yeah.
fingers crossed,
Yours.
distinctly me.
Yeah, I think so. I think the marks you make are very much noticeably yours, and you can see that in your web. The reason why I asked about sculpture was because you also have some fabulous sculptural works plus performance works that you have noted on your web. Do you work in that medium very much anymore, or is it mostly animation
It's
drawing?
mostly animation from time. I mean, when I perform, it's with animation. I will be live animating or
Yeah,
live drawing in collaboration with musicians, dancers, theatre, whatever
yeah,
whatever the project entails. Whereas sculpture, I still from time to time dabble, but animation's absolutely my
your
driver,
love.
and drawing's my love.
Yeah,
Um, and I'm lucky enough to have the studio, a type of studio that is really set up, and that, I mean, space dictates our work as an artist, and my space is not appropriate to sculpture, but it is
no,
very clearly crafted now to animation, so it's very easy for me to get in, set up, go.
yeah,
Whereas it's not a good space for sculpture. So when I do sculpture, there's that extra barrier to sort of work through.
yeah.
So it's a special thing when I seek something out in a sculptural language.
Yeah. The sculptures were beautiful, by the way. I really love them.
Thank you.
So your car doesn't fit in your studio anymore either, I noticed.
No, no,
The
not at all.
old garage turned studio,
The
and
garage
it's
turned
really
studio.
fabulous looking. So I guess what has been the greatest influence of your work? You've talked about a couple of significant artists. Were they right back in your early days that you discovered them and then went, oh, this is the area I really want to
You know, in
look
terms of
at?
great influences on my practice, there's probably been two people, and one of them feels really dark and naughty and political, and I'll come back to that. But the first one's really lovely, and that was
Is it Disney?
it wasn't Disney. It was actually so my parents. I'm a black sheep of the family. My parents were like, "What do we do with this kid?" And I came home from school with knowledge of an art school on the weekend as a teenager,
Right.
and I went along to this woman named Maria Makozaczynski McCaig, who had a very informal art school in her dining room. And it was a huge influence on my life. Every weekend we would
Wow.
go there and we were religious about it. And she just showed me the magic of being an artist and the magic of making art and the magic of living as an artist. Her house was a wonderland, and she'd just wander into a room, pick out a doll, pick out a play to put it in front of you and say, draw it. And off you'd go, and she'd train us up with technical skill. And
Gosh.
when I teach, her words just flow out of me. I still channel her. When I'm
Really?
stuck in the studio, I still hear her. She'll say, "The more you look, the more you see. The more you see, the better you draw." And that's a mantra that comes through in my head in her voice, and I try and impart in my students as well. So she was a huge influence on my life, and I'm
Oh my
extremely
goodness.
grateful for the time I spent with Maria. The other one is a bit of a turning point for me, which was the 2017 marriage equality plebiscite,
Hmm.
and which was a really tumultuous, horrific time for my community. And off the back of that, I had this moment that I talk about a lot, and I probably should stop talking about it because I need to stop giving Bob Catter so much credit. But Bob Catter was a huge influence on my practice because in the celebratory talks in Parliament as the Marriage Equality Act was sworn in, he got up and he basically said, my people, your people have 60 years of evolution on your side, but I've got 3 million of it. And I found that really horrific in amongst these celebrations, and especially from a man who'd written a book about Australian history, because in that moment I felt a call, for a lack of a better phrase, or a real drive to kind of excavate and look for all the
Those
wonderful moments
histories.
of queer history that
Yeah.
absolutely exist and have
Yep.
been hidden due to legislation, due to the homosexuality being illegal, due to social taboos
Yep.
that are absolutely there at the peripheral of the Australian experience. And so I hate saying it and I hate giving him credit, but I also owe him a lot. Bob Catter was a huge influence on my practice. That moment was a real turning point for me in my artistic career.
It's good to know to know that he's done something good then.
Yeah.
Just between us. All right, I better move on that question.
Yes, sorry.
That's okay. So what would you describe as your most memorable moment in your career?
Um, well, apart from winning the Sunshine Coast National Art Prize last year, which was
Nice.
just
Thanks, Todd.
delightful, um, and deeply moving and deeply quite profound. Um, there's this moment that I often think about, which was on my very first residency. I'm 22. I've landed in Paris. I've never been outside of Australia. I've barely been outside of the Hunter Valley, to be honest.
Mm.
Land in Paris, day one. I haven't even bought art supplies, and I take a rough sketchbook for a wander. And without meaning to, I end up at the Eiffel Tower and I sit there opposite the
Oh,
Eiffel Tower, drawing the Eiffel Tower. I don't even have a proper art supplies at the moment, so I'm literally picking up leaves on the ground and dipping them in my ink to make the sky.
huh.
Like, just this very surreal moment of wow, look where art has taken me.
Mm.
Um, and I hold on to that idea of where art can take you and where it took me. For a boy from Branxton, that was a really um, not to use the word again, profound moment that I often come back to. And I remember a real sense of calm coming over me as I drew in that moment of going, okay, it's okay, you've made it, whatever that
Oh,
means now, I think with
yeah, yeah,
hindsight, but you'd
yeah.
made it. Um, yeah, that's probably one of my biggest art memories, is just that lovely domestic, intimate moment of sitting
Mm.
there privately on some stairs opposite the river drawing the Eiffel Tower. And my mum
Yeah.
still has that drawing actually.
Does she?
It's a really nice part of
That's
our living
lovely.
room.
I think residencies are a really important growth for artists, and it also does give that sort of tick that you are an artist. They recognize that there's qualities in you that need to be expanded and built on, and all of those lovely things. So totally understand that idea of, oh, I've made it, because you got a residency to one of the most, prolific artist areas of the world, and I'm so jealous. I wouldn't have been able to draw the Eiffel Tower, but I certainly would have been roaming around in all of the extraordinary buildings and art places that they have over there. It would have been amazing. That's a really good best moment, I have to say, a
Yeah.
memorable moment. Um, and just keeping an eye on the time, we're doing quite well actually. So, what are you currently working on?
Great question. I've got two lovely institutional commissions at the moment, and
Hmm.
they're both due around the same time, and they're extremely different. So I'm bouncing between these two labor-intensive animations. They're both about the same-sex community in different ways.
Hmm.
One of them is for Manly, and basically it's for Mardi Gras next year, and it's a piece exploring the story of a local surfer who also happens to be a homosexual person. So it's a interesting moment where we kind of juxtapose our expectations of masculinity and homosexuality, from the
And
eyes
telling
and
a story.
experience, and telling a story,
Yep.
um, from his point of view, and
Perspective.
that's
Yep.
from his perspective. And the other one is also from someone else's perspective, and it's with Gosford
Okay.
Regional Gallery, and it's I mean, one of Gosford's most famous claims to fame in this space is an Anglican priest who, during the marriage equality campaign, sorry to keep coming
Hmm.
back to that moment, he used the sign out the front of his church to spread messages of inclusion and love,
Well, yeah.
and quite controversially copped a lot of backlash and copped even death
Yeah.
threats over daring to say, "Hey, people are gay, get over it." Um, and it's a really amazing story, an unlikely story from a queer perspective, but a story of incredible allyship, and incredible humanity, and a story from which, um, full of really lovely moments of light and dark that really lend themselves to my work, and are really important to share and keep alive, which is what we're trying to do with both these stories: is highlight and elevate and make visible queer experiences where we
Yeah.
expect them and sometimes where we don't expect them.
Yeah. The work we have, which is No Use Crying Over Torn Lace, tells a specific story that's really important. And that's one of the reasons why we're so excited to have it in the collection. When you look at these sort of stories that you tell, how do you do the research? Like the gentleman that you're, the surfer dude that you're talking to, do you go and interview him? Do you do sketches of him? And then does that all come together and you then do, like, do you do a film strip in your head and then you do the drawings, or the drawings inform the film script? I'm just trying to work out
Yeah.
your process a little bit.
Yeah, it shifts case to case and depending on what the story is and what we're trying to achieve, but there's definitely a lot of building relationship with the
Hmm.
subject. So before I'd even met the surfer, I'd um, emailed back and forth. I'd done 2 Zoom interviews with him where
Right.
we kind of unpack his story and I try and get to know him, and also try and make sure that he feels safe giving me
And
his
comfortable.
story.
Yeah.
Because that's a very real thing, is that these aren't my stories,
Mm.
and I need to do justice to that person and their story, and I need to do it respectfully. And so there's a lot of sort of conversation that goes on at that point. Then there's the actual image gathering, which is often they'll share images with me. I will
Right.
go and film reference material or draw with the subject, depending on time, depending on where it is, depending on availability.
Hmm.
And then at the story, like in terms of the actual making of the piece, there's usually
Yep.
some key beats or key moments I want to hit. But if I start with a storyboard, then I get bored, and I'm bored straight away. And then the
I thought you
drawing is
would
boring.
be.
Yeah.
Yes, I thought you would be, Todd. Yeah.
So, so it's more I start with moments, and then I let the moment. You've got to kind of intuitively respond to that moment. So
Yep.
that's where things like the lovely and unexpected transformations will happen on the page, and often they're surprising for my audience because they were surprising for me.
Yeah.
Um, so, for example, in No Use Crying Over Ripped Lace, there's a moment
Yep.
where I didn't know how to illustrate the um, Ivan Flynn, the character who was basically King Hit on Oxford Street,
Yep.
how to illustrate him falling over and that moment of deep impact. And I'd really sweated on, I don't really want to depict and glorify the violence of this
Yep.
piece. So how can I respectfully do that? Um, and it eventually was illustrated by dropping a kebab, because the story takes place at a kebab store. So it's
Yes. Yes.
finding those surprises and those moments in the piece actually happens on the floor with the piece of paper in front of me and responding to the moment you're trying to
Gosh.
illustrate. So yeah, no storyboarding. The storyboard almost happens in reverse. So often,
Yeah. Yeah. So you have all those key points that you want to make, and then how do you get to each of those key points in your drawings?
totally.
Wow, that's
And then you
amazing.
edit again in the actual post production, and that's where you again get to layer up and play with the relationships even more.
Yeah, yeah. That's extraordinary because I think you said there's, was it about 68 drawings or so for the work we have?
Uh there's I should have checked my numbers. There's
And I should have checked my numbers. I'm sorry, because
I
we have
think
chatted about this and I went,
no,
when I
that's
heard,
okay. Don't quote me, but I think that one is 3,600
oh,
drawings on
I only got 600.
uh, no, stills, sorry, on
Yeah.
34 pieces of
Pieces of
paper.
paper. So for people to think about, so there's 34 pieces of paper, but the stills are the changes of those papers, and the 34 papers are the key points,
Yeah,
almost, or getting to the key points.
so on one piece of paper, I might draw, say, a body moving 100 times. And
Yeah,
so
and you've
you'll
got to
have
take
100
photos each
remnants,
time.
but then you'll have
Yep,
one piece of paper. So at the end
yep,
of the day, I've got 100 photos from that and one
yep.
piece of paper.
And we've got a fabulous one of Coco, whose the head is moving in all different areas. So you get a sense of, oh, so it would have been here, and then they're moving across the page, and so you get a sense of how that comes together. But I cannot believe that you got all of these points that you're trying to make, and then you've got to get your drawing from one to the other, and you don't do that. You do that intuitively in front of you on your wall, that you tape your paper to your side of your. That's
Yeah,
extraordinary.
there's a bit of planning, but I kind of make a point not to, because the other problem I have, sorry, just throwing my headphone cable around. The other problem
That's
I
right.
have,
Hand actions.
yeah, is if I have processed it already, then it's not fresh on the page. So if I
Right.
catch myself already running the sequence, then by the
Yeah.
time it actually happens in my hand on the page, it's really stiff and dull. And that
Right.
freshness, that looseness, that quality of a sketchbook brought to life, which is one of the sort of key things I want to achieve in my work.
Yeah.
I want to look it to look like you've opened a sketchbook and it's suddenly dancing. Like
Yeah.
I'm trying to bring a drawing to life. And if I've already processed it, if I've already understood it and worked it all out, then it's not as fresh on the page. So I've got to be really careful about um, that sort of mental gymnastics that happens around animating and making sure it
Yeah.
happens at the right time, at the right place, with a sketchbook in front of me,
That's
or with
extraordinary.
the actual work in front of me.
Yeah. That's amazing. So, the interesting part about this is you do all of this, and you've got two commissions, and you work
Yeah,
that
yeah.
outside your art practice. So I don't know how you do it. That's
Uh,
amazing, Todd.
yeah. I love what I do.
Yes.
I love what I do. I love my job, and I love my art practice, and the um, yeah, I love what I do. I'm
And
very
he has a
tired, but I
dog.
love what I do.
Yeah. All right. So you've told us what we're currently working on. Just keeping an eye on the time, because I often go over sessions. So what is the one piece of advice that has stuck with you, other than the more you look, the more you do, the more you draw, the more you see?
Yeah, that's a good one. That's Maria's.
Yeah.
The other one, and it's really real, because we drawing art is a discipline. That's why we call them disciplines.
Yeah.
Um, Art's a practice. That's why we call it a practice. Um, but um, but more than that, the line that really demonstrated that for me the first time I really got it was when Nigel Harrison, great sculptor, great lecturer, said to me, you've got a real gift here, but you've got to use it or lose it. It's like a muscle, Todd. You've got to use it or lose it. And it wasn't till years later where I started going to the gym and actually understood how muscles work that I went, oh, the brain is a muscle. And
Yeah.
that's right. Because when I don't draw for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, suddenly it's really wobbly and I've got to work hard to bring it back. It's a muscle. Whereas when you get in that groove where you are doing it daily, or you are, dipping in and out of it a couple of times a week,
Yeah.
you've
It.
got the flow state of it. So use it or lose it is a real
Yeah.
another one of those mantras written on the whiteboard in the studio. Like, you've got to show up, you've got to be there, you've got to put in the time.
Yep. So you have a disciplined time that you spend in the studio, like you're working during the day, and then do you make sure you do drawing? Well, you have a sketchbook with you wherever you are, but and you obviously use that like in your lunch hour, cup of tea time. I'm just going to do a quick sketch. But do you have a disciplined time that you have to spend in the studio each week that you
So
ensure you do that?
I try and do my weekends in the studio, and that's
Right.
while that doesn't sound like a rest, because the weekend's for rest, it's also kind of filling up the heart cup in a way.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, I like that.
so yeah,
The
my
heart cup.
weekends are my studio time, and then on top of that, I try and do. I have a lovely desk upstairs as well, where I sit and do watercolors and think and write and work as well. So I try and do at least one night a week at that desk. And
Right.
then the other part of the equation that we never talk about is just how much admin time is involved in being an artist. So I tend to do a night of admin a week as well, of just trying to keep everything ticking along and keep the applications rolling in and keep replying and being
Yeah.
professional, because the other part we so often forget is that artists are professionals, and
Yeah.
we actually need to show up as the administrators and the managers of our practice as well. So
Yes.
there's all these different elements that
Just
all take time.
That's amazing. I'm just going to check and see if we've got any questions. Can't see any at the moment. So I'm not sure why, but because it's been amazing chat. So is there any other, so one piece of advice is to just do it and keep practicing it because it's a muscle and you need to do it. And I definitely agree with you. I trained as a ceramist and then I didn't do it for many, many years because I got involved in sort of arts, cultural management side of things because that was where you could get some money. Being an artist is very unforgiving in many ways. And for me, I've got a fear of going back to playing with clay now because it's, you've got to remember how it all works and all
Oh,
of
you
that
got to
sort of
rip that
stuff.
band-aid off.
Oh, I know.
You got to fill
Got
your
to do
heart
it at
cup
some
up.
point. I know. Well, I get to fill my heart cup by working with
Yeah.
artists and having art around me all the time. I'm so lucky. I'm in one of the best jobs in the world, I think, for that very reason. But so you've got two commissions. Are you looking at doing any residencies coming up, or you're pretty much committed to these commissions and working where you're working?
Yeah. I'm also
Happy?
really focused on just sustainability as well.
Hmm.
Like I'm trying to take on the right amount so that I can do um, the right amount of work and do it well, rather than taking on too much and always seeking it out too much.
Yeah. Okay.
When and also knowing which opportunities to say yes and no to when they come in as well.
Oh, that's
It's a real
hard.
game, and we don't talk about that, and we don't train
Yeah,
artists well in that area of being able to like weigh up the cost benefit of what a project actually is and
will do.
requires.
Yeah,
um, and also early on when you're an artist, you're just so hungry that you say yes to everything, and at the point where that kind of tips and you've got to focus on what's practical, we don't really prepare artists for that, and that's a real thing that I'm trying to focus on and learn about. So no, I've on purpose, I'm intently trying to be really smart about what work I take on and what work I
yeah,
can manage so that I can do it really effectively and do it well. Um, A, for myself, B, for the people around me, and C, for the people I'm creating work for, so that I am giving them the best quality I can
yeah.
within the confines of the practical realities of this wonderful thing we call life.
Yes. Well, I think I really love your work. I think it's really important as well. I think the conversations you're having and the highlighting of stories that are very, very rarely shared or outside of one community, but in a wider community is really important. And I think the element of drawing humanizes it almost, and that because it's not mechanical, you can see the artist's hand in it. It's there's a nice sort of sense of you telling the story through your line, which I think is amazing. So no, we don't have any questions from the floor. It's been such a good, you've answered all the questions.
Great, great.
That's amazing. But I think what people do usually, if they can't get to this conversation today, they'll look at it tonight or something, and then they might send questions. And if we get any, we'll definitely send them through to you because
Awesome,
you're
awesome.
an amazing person to chat to, and you have so much knowledge. And I just, my hat's off to you. I think you have an amazing practice, and you also have a really significant job that you're doing, and you're in a partnership, and you've got a puppy, all of the things. And I think you're doing an amazing job. And we're so really very pleased to have your work in the collection, which, if people haven't been to see our latest exhibition, which is Latest and Greatest, Todd's drawing works are definitely on the wall, and you can see that beautiful one of Coco. It's one of my favorites. And I have to tell the story. So Todd won the Sunshine Coast National Art Prize last year. We were so excited because we hadn't had an animation work win. I'm going to cough, excuse me for a second. And he did a talk with Julie Ewington, who was our judge, and he was chatting away, and he went, "Oh, and I have all these drawings," and automatically I went, "He's got drawings. He's got drawings. What does he do with the drawings?" And then so I bailed him up, and then we found out there was still some drawings that we could actually acquire for it, and he then donated some as well. So it's beautiful. We have this whole selection of not only the finished piece, which is a really powerful and amazing work, but we also have these amazing drawings as well, which you can come and see at the Caloundra Regional Gallery on until I think the 12th of April.
And it's so
So,
nice to keep them together as well. It's really nice when they stay together, they support and enhance one another, and it's
oh,
almost like you've got a little mini exhibition for future
yeah.
sitting there at your fingertips.
Well, always when we want to celebrate Todd, we can pull them out and go, here's, but it's more than that. It's the work is so layered, which is what's really important. And the contemporariness of the work is also amazing. But it comes from this real traditional medium of drawing, which I love. I love, because when we went through uni, when I went through uni, drawing was still something that you did, but not an elective, but you did do it as your fundamentals. I know a lot of university schools are dropping drawing, which I think is a really interesting decision, because it sort of underpins everything you do, because it makes you see, and I think that's
the
a
more you
really
see, the more you see, the better you draw.
yeah, all of that and
Yep.
or make. Anyway, I think so I think that might be it. We've reached a little bit over time. So thank you so much, Todd. It's been such a joy to chat to you again. And I'm looking forward to seeing the commissions when they hit the pavement, so to speak, and see what they are. And I'm sure they're going to be spectacular. And anybody, if you want to come into the gallery, please do. The exhibition's on. It's a phenomenal exhibition that Nina's put together. There's so much work on the floor. It's ridiculous how much work. And she always goes mad at me for overhanging. And she's got like, I think 98 works or 86 works on the floor. But it's extraordinary. All of these works have either been donated or have come into the collection in the last 2 years. And it's only a portion of the works that we've been getting donated, which is, we have such generosity in our community, which is extraordinary as well from you as well. So thank you very much, everybody. I look forward to chatting. We've got another artist in conversation next week, so that's great. And all of you artists out there, as Todd will say, put in your entry for Sunshine Coast National Art Prize 2025. So that's open to the public and to us, not to the public, sorry. Well, the public if they want to, but the artists in the whole of the nation. And we look forward to seeing another fabulous exhibition this year. But thank you, Todd, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you, and give my love to the team.